This and this represent the biggest challenges to learning and education today. I'll get back to these in just a second, because you may be thinking that the biggest challenges in education and learning today, whether it's a corporate environment or whether it's a school or an academic setting, are things like artificial intelligence, where we're taking away things like critical thinking skills or creative skills or challenging them. You may think that the biggest threat to education and learning today are attention spans, things that have been devolved through things like short-form video, TikToks, and things that cause us to lose our ability to focus. But the reason why I say these are the biggest threats is because these have been the biggest threats for quite some time now. These represent the training environment, the classroom, the corporate training room, where everything is in its place. It's bolted down. There's a projector bolted to the ceiling. There's a whiteboard bolted to the front of the room. The instructor podium is at the front. The desks, maybe they're bolted in place, maybe they're a little bit movable, but they're in a specific spot where everything is designed for information delivery. The front of the classroom delivers information to the audience in the classroom. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the tools that I like to use that allow me to have all of the things I need for training and development, but also allow them to be moved around an environment so that I can create a dynamic environment, foster communication between the participants in a classroom or a training setting, and take advantage of what we know is important for actual effective communication and education. So this bag contains an entire portable classroom. Everything I need to create a dynamic, flexible classroom with all of the resources I need, and I can train anywhere. Welcome to Learning and Technology with Frank. On this YouTube channel, we look at how we can use technology with intention to learn, teach, and be more productive. We also have a Skool community where we have discussions around how we use technology with intention, and I'll put a link down below if you're interested in joining the conversation there as well. Let's take a look at the environment that we learn in and how we can create our own portable, movable environment using a few different tools and pieces of hardware that I like to have that I'm fortunate enough to be able to use in my own training. I think we're all familiar with a typical classroom, the four-walled classroom, where we'll have, maybe if we're lucky, we'll have some windows. So we'll have some windows, a little bit of natural light coming in, and then we'll have three walls. We'll have an instructor's desk or podium somewhere at the front. We'll have a whiteboard and a pull-down screen at the front as well. We'll have a projector on the ceiling that shows anything on the screen there. And then we'll have students' desks. Sometimes these are mounted in place, so they cannot be moved. Sometimes they can be moved around the classroom. And we, of course, know that we have a lot more than just the few that I've shown here. We sometimes have 30 to 40 students in a classroom. But this is our general configuration, and it's designed for somebody to sit at the front and to provide information to those people sitting in the room. There are, of course, variations on this theme. We could have a large lecture hall that has hundreds of students, but a lot of times the same basic foundational principles are in place. You have the front of the classroom, and you have where the students sit and are fed information. And we know this is problematic. I happen to teach for a large polytechnical institution, and at our institution, we of course have carpentry shops for carpentry students. We have medical simulation labs for our medical students. We have kitchens for our culinary students. But when it comes to theory classes or your traditional classroom, we still have that same style where we have the front of the class and we have where the students sit, and it's that information exchange rather than a modern learning environment. And we know that modern learning environments really shouldn't be built that way. Now, research tells us that the environment that the student is learning in is very important for their ability to effectively learn. I went into AnswerThis, and I'll put a link down below. AnswerThis is a tool that I use that allows me to conduct research and generate literature reviews. I use this quite a bit as a hypothesis testing tool or to do some preliminary work, pull papers and such, so I can explore a subject in more depth without having to invest hundreds of hours in the process, but prepares me to invest more time if I decide to pursue this further. I have other videos here on the channel about AnswerThis. But I went through and I asked it the question about what is the effect of the environment on learning outcomes, and it pulled a number of different papers. I did go through and took a look at a couple of these papers, but it also provided me with a really nice summary of the research that had been done. And you can see here, I'll just want to focus on this practical takeaway, where it talks about the research suggesting that effective classroom design combines several elements, and with a focus here on both the active learning configurations, the flexible environment that supports interaction, and the ability to move things around in order to create an environment that matches the activities that we're engaged in and the way that we want to communicate with our students, and even more importantly, the way that we want our students to communicate with each other. I'll be doing some other videos here on the channel where I talk about the evolution of education, especially in the age of AI, and where community has become really the way that we help students learn by letting them work with each other and by providing a community of practice. That's a whole other video. That's maybe a whole other several videos. But I did go through and pull some papers here to prove this point, that the environment does have an effect on the way that people learn and the effectiveness of their learning. So the research is there. What does it mean to have a flexible environment? We obviously can't build whole new buildings, so let's take our existing or our old classroom. Same idea, 4 walls, couple of windows here, but we can reconfigure what's inside this classroom. In fact, where I teach, we do have a number of innovative workplaces or innovative learning spaces. What we can do is we can make sure that we have empty surfaces on 2 or 3 of the walls, depending on where the door is. This gives us the ability to project to different areas of the classroom. I can move a projector around and project to different areas of the classroom. And later in the video, I'll show you some of the equipment that I use. And we also can configure the environment where the students sit. Instead of having them sit in rows and desks, we can create workspaces, tables or benches or areas, and these can be on wheels that can be moved around and reconfigured, allowing us to configure the room, have the instructor move around, have the students move around, project to different walls, even work on different walls in order to have a more dynamic environment. Now, of course, I'm just talking about a traditional training environment, a classroom that already exists, and talking about reconfiguring it. It could be a corporate training room or a classroom in a school. Sometimes we're actually just given a room to do training in where we have none of these things. We don't have projectors, we don't have screens. We just have to make do with what's there. Plus, we could even be in an environment where we're not just training people that are in the room with us, but we also want to be able to be online in a Zoom or a Teams call so that we can do a hybrid type training. Remote participants can also be part of the training. Well, in order to do that, there are a few pieces of equipment that I like to have. These are pieces of equipment that I own personally that I can take with me when I do any type of training. I can bring them into environments that I'm not familiar with and know that I have the resources I need to do the training I want to do. If I'm going into a familiar environment, then I know what's in that environment and I can work with that environment. But I think you'll find some of these things kind of interesting. They're pieces of equipment that I've collected over the past couple of years that I find very useful. The equipment that I'm using falls into several categories. The first category is really my computer. I always want to make sure that I have a portable computer that I can use. So I think that's kind of a given. I won't talk too much about computers here. But I do want to make sure I can use Zoom and Teams on this computer, because I will often, while I'm teaching, have a Zoom's meeting or a Teams call running concurrently with my in-person training so that I can record it and so that people can see it after the fact or join in. I also need to be able to have both some way to provide visual information to the computer as well as sound. So if I'm going to do anything with Zoom and Teams, I want to have some sort of AV equipment in there that allows me to have visual and sound, and that's going to take the form of a camera, for example. So I'll show you a camera that I have that I really like, that I can use in this type of environment. And I want to have a speaker as well so that there's audio if people are participating. So those are things that I will need, and we'll talk about that in a second. The other thing that I think is really important is I like to use a whiteboard, but I use an electronic whiteboard. So what I'll do is I'll project that whiteboard onto a wall or a screen, and I will then be able to use a remote in order to navigate through slides, and I'll be able to use some equipment in order to work with the whiteboard that I'm projecting. And I also like to have a little timer device just to keep things on time when I'm working in the classroom. So let me show you some of these things that I like to bring into my classroom environment to make it dynamic and exciting environment. So that brings us to our classroom in a bag. If they don't have what I want in the classroom, I'll bring it myself. So there's a few things in here. There's a couple of small items. For example, I have a little timer. This allows me to keep track of activities, make sure that I'm on time. I have a little remote, so this here's a little remote that I'll use. This means that I can walk around the environment without having to go back to my computer to advance slides. The only thing I don't have in this bag is my computer. I'm using it to film. But you can see here that I've got this little remote. I can use that to advance through slides. A very handy tool to have. Very common that you'll see that in any classroom. But now let's get into a few of the items that are maybe a little bit unique, but really allow me to have this classroom portable and with me wherever I go. The first thing I'm going to have is this portable projector. Now, this portable projector is actually a little Arzun Roku TV. So it actually is an entertainment projector, but I can use this to connect up my computer and project my PowerPoints or any presentations I have onto a blank wall. So as long as I have a flat surface in the room that I'm training in, this will allow me to go anywhere within that room and use it to project and to do my training. It also allows me to AirPlay to it, so if I'm using an iPad or an iPhone, I can actually play presentations or videos off of those devices directly to this projector, which then allows me to put that onto a wall. The next thing that I have is a tablet. I really like this tablet. It's a drawing tablet, but what this allows me to do is use a stylus and then actually use this as a whiteboard. So if I use the projector to project Microsoft Whiteboard onto a wall, I can then use this stylus in order to use the whiteboard software on my computer, and everything that I draw on here will be projected onto the wall. This makes life a lot easier than trying to draw with a mouse. It's a great solution, a little drawing tablet. Now, I did also mention that I might have people joining my classroom from an external source through Teams or Zoom. In order to have them participate, I'll want to have a camera. This here is a 360 camera. It allows me to have the entire room, wherever this is placed, it will automatically encompass the entire room. It will focus on the speaker of whoever's presenting or talking at any given time, and it has built-in audio as well. So does the projector. It also has built-in audio, but I can have the audio from the camera as well, either as a speaker or as a microphone. And then finally, I have a webcam book scanner object visualizer. So I've talked about this and I've talked about all of these in other videos, but I can put this on my desk and I can actually use this as a way of having a webcam for my environment. I can have this as a scanner for, let's say I want to project down and have an object like a piece of paper or something on my desk. This can then be shared on the screen, so I can actually share my computer to the projector, have this connected to my computer, and anything being visualized on this device will allow me, this is a Caesar Fancy Pro, or fancy, I'll have to look the name, I'll link all this below, but this will allow me to have a visualizer. All of this fits into this bag here. There's some cables, of course, but this all fits into this bag here that will allow me to go in and carry a classroom with me wherever I go. So we've seen how the traditional classroom environment might not be the best environment for learning and training, especially in today's world where we need to build learning communities. We took a look at how the research backed that up, and then we talked about how we could take a bag of portable devices and turn any room into a dynamic training room. I hope you found that interesting. If you have more questions, put those down in the comments. Join us on the Skool community. Let's have a discussion about what tools are good for teaching in a portable, dynamic environment. Thank you so much for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.